I moved to Lansing when I was younger than I can remember. I remember we moved here because my grandma was starting to get to the age where she needed a little more help. So the house next door on Exchange Street was available. And it wasn't really like a, hey, we're going. It was like a, this is, we're gonna be close to grandma. And me at that age was so happy to be by my grandma and be able to see her, especially because when we did move in, my dad knocked down one of the panels of the fence and we had our yards even connected and everything. So we were able to see grandma anytime we wanted to. By her request, they sent me to St. Anne's. After extended day, grandma would take care of the kids in the extended area. So I remember hours staying with her, drawing, playing with Legos, and hanging out. And that was back when grandma drove her little Honda Civic. I guess it was probably like, what was that, like 2004 or 5 maybe? I went to Oak Glen in 2nd grade. Oak Glen was a little farther from where we were. I didn't take the bus, as I remember. I was always a dropped off in the morning kid till about 5th grade. Oak Glen was, I was in the old school, so I remember the old buildings before they had the nice bricks and all the fancy outside parking lots they did. I remember the old circle buildings of Oak Glen. As they began knocking everything down and changing everything, I was actually there right around the exact same time that they were doing that. It was a fun experience to get to grow up at a time when all the schools that I was going to were getting refurbished and rebuilt. I went to Memorial, and again, I was in the old building. As I started to get older, I knew Memorial and TF South were normal, and that was where I was going to be going. And my mom moved to Ridgewood after my parents separated, and we were a block away from the school. I mean, Ridgewood is like, it was a 5-minute walk from Memorial and a 9-minute walk from TF South. And 6th grade in the very beginning, I would say 6th through 7th was kind of when we all got sat down by Mr. Zimmerman and we all were told, this is it. Say goodbye to Memorial because it's gone. It's gonna go. And we're like, what's going on? And he said, it's getting completely redone. We're gonna be the first kids in the new building and the last kids in the old building. So my graduating class, I guess, got to be the last ones to see the building go down, and to the point of where we were sitting in math class and heard walls being knocked down to our left and right as the building was crumbling around us and being rebuilt. So it was a really cool experience, and I definitely say, like, as compared to like being in a brand new school, it was really cool to be able to see that historic building as it stood and be the first ones to get to see the new one. We were the guinea pigs, I guess you could say, of that. I played Little League in Lansing. My dad was a coach. I played for a ton of different teams in Lansing Little League from a real young age too. I would say since I first moved, I played baseball throughout that time. The hopscotch event from when I was a kid has got to be one of my favorite memory blurs, because the hopscotch, I don't remember where it came from. Like I don't know what one day, I'm sure on the video, either my mom or me was talking about hopscotch. And we must have got into wanting to just take it to that level. And Guinness has always been like kind of who people call if they spit the farthest or jump the highest. They want to ask, hey, did we do something good now? And we had to know. And I believe the Guinness people told us that there was no legit record for it, but we're gonna come out, measure, give you a certificate and everything. I mean, we almost to the point created it as a thing. So I'm sure at this point, if someone saw that, they're like, oh, that's gonna be easy. I'll do 6 blocks and beat that. But I remember it being all the way to the very tip of our driveway, like all the way down, like into the street almost. And like we had to shut the street down for some of the time because it was so long. It was a fun time. And there was a ton of people out. It was almost like a block party. There were so many people there. Yeah, my mom's, I don't know if it was Guinness by their request or if it was her just trying to be neat, but they The square was like a template that we created in order to make sure every single square was like exactly even and exactly like the same, so that it would be a legitimate measurable record. The balloons, I think, were for the camera because it was easy to see a giant, on normal hopscotch, you would have numbers on the ground and you'd be looking down as you hopped. But for us, we have, you can stand at number 1 all the way at the very beginning from the very end of the driveway and look way down and see number 80 and number 120 down there, because the balloons kind of gave you that 3-dimensional view of what we were doing. The block parties too there was a lot of block parties. Anybody on Exchange Street or anyone near Lanark Park would have probably remembered the huge 4th of July parties. Grandma's mustacholi, 7 or 8 10-pound containers of mustacholi, and we shut the blocks down and with the town and got like the little gates put up, and I mean, over 150 people or more. I mean, different circumstances now, but it was crazy to see seas of people who I have never met before, and I'm just a kid whose parents happen to be hosting it. Whenever we had like stand-up stuff, especially around 5th grade, Mr. Corey's class, whenever we had stand-up talking stuff, I was the one who always had something to say, and still do to this day. I always have reports and things like that. During 7th and 8th grade, I started to become way more interested in military. My military service goals and thoughts came from 5th grade. I had told myself my birthday is September 11th, and I said, I might as well enlist. It'll look cool. September 11th, and I'll join. And I thought, where am I gonna go? I'll join the Marine Corps eventually. So I was fascinated with history, military history, and especially around the World War II era. My grandpa served in World War II as a PBY gunner. He left his flight book behind. I got lucky enough to be able to see that and a whole bunch of other artifacts that he left behind, and it honestly spiked my love for history and the military and just everything that the U.S. went through decades and decades before I was anywhere near around. So it's cool I started writing, I would say, entirely fiction, random war stories as a 6th or 7th grade boy would write. And eventually I wanted to develop a solid, real story. And 8th grade is really when that started to happen. I had a history teacher in 8th grade who had, to this day, I think, the biggest history passion that I've ever known of a person. And that, plus being able to see all the artifacts that he brought in for our class in 8th grade, sunk home the history buffs inside me. As a writer, I would say mid-8th grade, at a camping trip, is when I finally sprouted the idea for my first story. I started high school 2010, I believe that was, and at TF South, and immediately I had told myself that I have to finish this book before high school's over, because I'm enlisting in the Marine Corps the day that I turn 17. So I'm not gonna have much time to get it done, and I figured in the military I was gonna be extremely busy. So I said, let's get this done. And I spent day in and day out pumping away at character ideas and stories and taking friends' names and changing them around and asking teachers if I could stay behind class and pick their brains about stuff. And I met a handful of teachers that were maybe junior and senior year while I was a freshman, saying, this kid, this is the one who's gonna be giving us a run. And shortly after I got to about, I think it was junior year, was when I had played baseball for my history teacher, Mr. Roberts, and he kind of was my go-to for that, as well as Norm's Military in Lansing is another place that I used in high school daily. I went there to talk to him about historical accuracy and things like that, because writing a story about something that happened but something that may not have happened is a trip to do. The other teacher that I have to mention is Miss Bywater, Miss Augerson at the time when I was in a freshman. I had her for English, I had her for creative writing, and as far as like professional editing goes, she was the best I had. Most of the editing of my book I did solely and with my family and with please can you just look at this, and it was just and it was my brother who was years younger than me. I'm handing him the book now, who's old enough to read. Hey, can you take a look at your brother's book? And I knew that I had my limited time. I was exercising, I was trying to keep healthy and my mind straight so I could get into the military, and also trying to like get some schoolwork done in the meantime while I was in the middle of trying to publish a book. And it seemed that like the photo finish was gonna happen when I was already in the Marine Corps. My Marine Corps enlistment happened in 2013. I would say right as I'm getting out of high school. It was as I had planned since 5th grade. I wanted to go in, and I said it was probably going to be the Marine Corps. Those uniforms are so cool. I might as well go to the Marine Corps. So I went, and I also thought I would cure my water fear, which definitely didn't happen. But I definitely learned how to swim, so thank you, Marine Corps. I learned how to swim, survive, I should say. I still don't go in the water though, so I guess that's that. I went in open contract because I wanted to go so bad, and I went in San Diego. I was California because depending on the border that you are, Illinois, Indiana, you go either West Coast or East Coast. So I got to go to California. They called it Hollywood Marines, which is great because this is my first time I ever went to California. I got to see San Diego. I did combat training and I did boot camp, and I got a extra little service time to return home because I graduated boot camp right around when Christmas was that year. My mom's birthday is August 19th. It is actually the day I left, August 19th, 2013. I was stationed in multiple places. I did mechanics school in the East Coast and got to see the East Coast for the first time. I had never been to North Carolina, so that was fun. It was cool to go to North Carolina and see just the whole other side of the country. And compared to the West Coast, I mean, you wouldn't even think that they're in the same, like they're connected. There's no way they're connected. So combat training was slow. They were very full. So I spent a ton of time in North Carolina sitting in a barracks room waiting for my training time to come and sticking my face in my book and getting as much done as I possibly could writing. Any downtime that I got in the military, I spent it either talking to a bunch of old guys that were hanging out and said, hey, I need your help. I know you know stuff. Or I spent it sticking my face in a computer screen trying to find out all the stuff that had already passed. And being in the military, getting able to sit on the range, getting able to train and hear the yelling and hear the mentality that comes with the military, it really strengthened, I would say, a war narrative that I was trying to put out with whatever twists that I was developing as I would go on to the story. But the military helped really reiterate how it's just a different world. It's just a different mentality that they have there. And as a mechanic, I was constantly learning, and I'm not a car person, not a vehicle person. So I had gone into mechanic school and I had gone to the rifle range, never had picking up a firearm and never had touching a wrench before. This was a writer who likes to tell stories and is now learning how to operate weapons, learning how to drive vehicles, learning how to drive stick shift. I mean, just so many different things that you are just kind of expected to. Like, hey, it's just, this is it. This is part of your job description. So it was definitely a different time. I look at my life like a book as chapters, and that's one chapter that's definitely lengthier than what was written. I got out in 2014. I had a back injury and got out early and had ample time to write. Union Pacific Railroad hired me. So I started working at Union Pacific. I had little to no downtime working there. But at that point in time, I told myself, this book is done. I, at this point, just need to pull the trigger. And I was so afraid because it was 2014 when I said, this could be done now. And I waited another, I would say 3 years after that, till I actually said, okay, this is it. This is time to go, because I knew there was no way I could edit, and there's no way I could continue writing as I was doing while trying to put out a book at the same time. So I had to kind of sit back, pause, and take some time out to say, am I gonna finish this book or not? And it kind of brought me to the library and brought me to finally saying, this is it, this book is ready. The title of the book is The Ballad of Serial Number 121211. I developed the name of the story as well as the premise of the story at the same time. The whole joke behind the name of it is actually, it's the date that I chose the name of the story. I knew it was going to be the ballad of a rifle. It was going to be the story of a rifle. It was going to be the epic tale of a single rifle traveling through World War II. Just as every single inanimate tool was used during that war and during that time, I figured, what if you just took every camera and pointed it just at that one rifle? What if you just took that one rifle, that one serial number, whatever the number is, and just said, where is it gonna go? Who's gonna get it? And I said, I have to meet some people before I get a chance to really think that this story is doable. I met a veteran named Louis Venditti through my uncle, Bob Seymour, who is the manager at Lincoln Oaks Golf Course in Crete. Louis passed a few years ago, and in his time that I got to spend with him, he was an unbelievable history prep. I mean, the guy was chock full of knowledge at 96 and had been a firefighter and an iron worker, and there's so much information on him. I myself could not do justice to someone who lived as an incredible life as Louis did. He gave me a massive amount of information, including the answer to one huge question that I had to ask. And I said, when you enlisted and drafted and got into combat, did you end with the same weapon that you went into combat with? And he said, I didn't have the same one the same night I dropped. He was a 101st Airborne veteran. His job was to drop behind one of the beaches overnight before the D-Day invasions, and his story still to this day, I mean, I can still hear him telling the story to me because it was incredible. I used his knowledge, I used his feelings and view of the war, and I decided, instead of telling him as a character, I decided that Louis' personality and experience was going to be the theme of my characters. So I took his story and blended it amongst my entire book to give the same way he told his stories as the same way I would tell my story. Just the way that he was able to put a teenage kid in that mindset was unreal. And being able to go and sit down and talk to him was incredible. The story begins in 1941, right after the US was attacked. And the story ends, that's the fun part of the story, is it technically ends at the end of World War II, but I have plans for this rifle. As an inanimate object will do, it's gonna travel, and it travels so much. I told myself I would either, I laid out timelines, and I said, where could I get this rifle? And I showed Norm in Lansing, and I showed Louis, and I showed a few other veterans that I sat down at the VFW and said, I got 50 bucks. Who wants drinks? I need stories. And I, for as much as I could, I said, I need real first-person experience so I can feel how these characters are feeling. I wanted whoever was holding the rifle to be able to tell the story from their point of view, from in their mind, how they see and view the war. If they were a anti-war person who just wanted to get home to their wife, if they were a angry and forced to join by the Germans, if they were if this was a forced person who is in combat, their opinion is going to differ. The way that they carry that rifle, the way they hold themselves, the way they feel is going to be completely different than the gung-ho American GI that's excited about killing crowds. I wanted to be able to tell every aspect of World War II, not just the characters who you're used to seeing on film. Originally, when I was sitting in my dad's van on the way home from Wisconsin on a camping trip, It was at that time when he was asking me about what I was writing, what I was working on, and what I was doing, and I had my notebooks that I had carried around everywhere, and just random sheets of paper and schoolwork that I probably should have turned in, but instead wrote World War II notes on. I thought, this story doesn't end in World War II, does it? And the original story itself, the ballad itself, doesn't actually end. There's a theme behind the story, and that is, where do I go? Where do I, the rifle, go at the end of this? And as you go on, you can see 3, 4, 5 different keys in my story that eventually became what I'm now calling the Rifle series. It used to be just the ballad alone. I'm now calling it the Rifle series. The sequence of the stories that I chose was, they don't go in order. The stories themselves, as I put stories out and as you read them, they'll answer questions. I am a huge fan of the Hill House show. The way that those people write is the way that the ballad is going to treat its readers. Everything gets revealed in time. A lot of the parts of the story, a lot of the characters, a lot of the things that get carried on into the future, people who live their lives and go on to different things. I wanted to not only do historical fiction, but I wanted to change my genre. So I took the sequence of the story and said, let's do historical fiction first. Let's get the history out of the way. Let's tell the story of how this rifle was born. We'll get into the dystopia future with the rifle in a little bit. There's a lot more to come, a lot more. The Lansing Public Library event, the first real book event, only real book event I've ever actually done, is actually a story that will bounce around. Years ago, I would say around 4th or 5th grade, I was still in Oak Glen. I was an avid Lego collector and still am. I was told by the library that they needed a case filled, and I was absolutely there. Let me do a Star Wars battle scene with Legos as a 4th grade kid will be an expert at. So I met all the library people through that, and my mom worked there for a short period of time and helped out and worked in the kids section downstairs. So whenever I was there, I'd be on the computers and I would be hanging out in the area. So when a book release time came years later, I thought, I'm gonna do it at the library. I'm as comfortable as I am there anywhere else. And Debbie at the library, who's still there as she's the director or manager, and she was the one who was the director of this entire event. She said, come on by, come talk to me, let's figure out an event. And I sat down with her, talked to her for a while, and she said that there hadn't been, a lot of that going on, and she was excited and that there was going to be more events like that. And I said, if I could be the one, I was like, I'll publish every single time I put out a book, I'll be here. I would love to have more events like that and more things like that, including poetry slams and other things like that. Would be a lot of fun to have, because writing is it's just like music. Everyone in the world can bond over music. Writing, I feel like, is the same way. I feel like there's a lot of different styles of writing. Some people who may not like historical fiction may love a romance novel and get lost in it and would be their favorite thing in the world. I've never attempted at writing anything past historical fiction yet, but during the event and during the writing of this book, I thought, oh, I have 100 ideas. I have so many different books that I can do, and different stories that I can do, and sizes too, of short novels and short stories that I wanted to publish, but without the sense of direction, it was hard to, as an independent writer who finishes a book, it's hard to then say, now what? The library definitely gave me that, this is it, this is what I need to do now. I'm no longer the writer of a book. I'm now the person who needs to tell people about this thing. I need to talk about it as much as I possibly can, and that's when I was first in front of a crowd about my book. And I'd say that being a 50 to 60 people was the largest group that I had talked about my book in front of at the same time before. So the only feeling that was the dominant feeling was the feeling of completion, the feeling of actually being done, of me being able to stand on the side of that stage when everyone was kind of just talking amongst each other, and Louis was there, and I said, look at that, I'm done. I'm finished with this book. I had a few moments like that whole week where I was done. I said, I'm done and I no longer need to. And then I said, oh no, I have more to write. I have more to do now. This is exciting. I get to hold my book in my hand. It gets to be done. But now that this is done, I feel a hole it's got to be filled. If I'm not writing, if I'm not working on something, if I'm not creating something new, then I feel like I don't have a sense of direction. So that is what I'm pushing towards right now, is getting getting myself back on that stage again and getting back out there to the library to another event. Poetry for me has always been since 5th grade. I do not remember the exact what I wrote, but we had a class or a unit or a section or a time or a paper where we had to write a poem of some kind, and we could rhyme it if we wanted to. We didn't have to if we didn't want to. And I did. I wrote one, and I don't remember what it was about. I don't remember where it was, what it was like, but I remember being like, wow, I could do this. I could do poetry. I have not a musical bone in my body, but I can do poetry. And I fell in love with it from there. I started reading Emily Dickinson, Silverstein. I bought Falling Up again because I grew up with that book, and I found it at Target, so I had to get it again. And I love being able to talk in rhythms and talk in like themes. I like being able to be carried along this little tidbit about something, and then eventually be like, oh, that's what that is. That's awesome. That's cool. That's about a rainbow or whatever it was about. And 5th grade really nailed that for me. 6th through 8th, I didn't stop. I kept writing, and I don't know where it came from. A lot of it was romantic for a girlfriend here or there. Some of it was about the world around me that I barely understood and still don't. And I said, oh, I have so many of these that I could probably bind them. I can probably put them in a continuous order that would allow a reader to open up a page or a chapter and say, I can enjoy this one and this one separately, and be able to get the same kind of feeling that I got from writing it. Maybe they can go, aha, I feel the same way. And I titled it Letters of a Darkened Heart, and it is 170 pages long. And it is in the middle of being edited right now. That can be expected pretty soon. Beside the tide, I'm lost at sea, on a ship that's filled with priceless arts, which feels misplaced to me. Between old sails and creaking boards, we've both seen better days. With many years so far we stray, bright colors start to gray. My heart, just like this boat, still floats. We've both sprung plenty leaks. Through all these years, these hands may mend from a nail or board you'd lend. I've sworn to spend this life at sea. Your heart beats strong for me. And from my deck, my sinking ark, no matter how many years apart, you're still that light that guides me home, my lighthouse in the dark.